In a previous video, I shared with you my vitrectomy adventure. It was discovered that I had a detached retina in my left eye, and if you look closely, you can see it's still not completely healed. I discovered it in January, February of this year. Did the operation at St. Luke's Hospital. The operation is called a vitrectomy, and the detached retina is pressed back into place, and then a gas bubble is put inside the eye in order to keep the pressure up while the eye heals. So that's a short version. If you'd like more details, you can check out the video. I'll put a link in the description. But this time, I'd like to focus on the expenses. And this might be of particular use for you if you're on this side of the world, or for whatever reason you happen to be considering a vitrectomy. Then the expenses that I incurred here in the Asia Pacific region, in Southeast Asia, may be of interest to you. So we're going to focus now strictly on the expenses. So once I discovered, and this might also be important if you are paying out of pocket, as I was. Many people, of course, might be covered by their insurance, but I was paying for this out of pocket. So it might be good to have an idea of all the expenses that you'll encounter, some that you may not anticipate. So this might be helpful in that regard. Now, so once I discovered that I needed the vitrectomy and that the healing would take at least 2 months, I would be required to stay on the ground, meaning no flying, because that would affect the pressure of the gas bubble in the eye. So I need to stay in the Philippines at least 2 months. So we'll say 60 days. So as a Jamaican passport holder, the maximum amount of time that I could stay, I believe, was 30 days. So I would have to get a medical visa that would allow me to stay longer. So that costs $30 US, or 1740 pesos. 1,740 pesos. Then, in order to get the visa, I had to send it to the Philippine consulate on Guam. So that cost me $60 through sending it express through DHL. My airline ticket to the Philippines, I bought a one-way ticket because I had no idea when I would be returning. So I bought a one-way ticket that costs about $534. And you'll notice in these two columns, I have the US cost and then the converted Philippine peso cost. And I'm using a conversion of $1 to 58 pesos. All right. Then, while I was there, as a result of going through other complications with the operation, I had to actually request 2 additional extensions. So when I thought I didn't leave, when I thought I was going to leave, so I had to extend one extension for, I think, an extra 30 days. And then I realized I would be staying longer, so I had to go back and get a second extension that cost me roughly $170, $180 US. And then ultimately, after 4 months in the Philippines, when I was finally released to go back to Saipan, my return ticket cost about the same, $550. So the total for the visa and the travel is $1,364, and that's from here on Saipan. So my travel to the Philippines from Saipan, round trip, including visas, was approximately $1,300 US, or 79,000 Philippine pesos. Okay, next, the procedures and the professional fees. One of the things I learned at St. Luke's Hospital was that and this was my first time at a major hospital, so those of you who've encountered this before, bear with me. So there's a procedure, and then there's the professional fees. When I was quoted the expected cost of the vitrectomy, it seems that I was quoted only the cost of the procedure, and not the additional cost of the doctor's time and expertise, the professional fees. So it ended up being a bit more than I expected. So all of the operations that I incurred, there was the vitrectomy and the stay in the hospital, and that was approximately $3,200. And then there was the surgical team's professional fees, the doctor, his assistant, the person who is administering the anesthesia. That's the word I was looking for. And that was an additional $3,400 US. Thereafter, the vitrectomy started to heal, and we realized that there was high pressure. Then I was referred to a glaucoma specialist, and his weekly visits was another, let's see, about $500. There was a separate operation that he did in SLT, selective laser trabeculoplasty, and that was additional $339. And then ultimately there was a third operation, which was putting an implant in the eye, a valve to facilitate the drainage in the eye. So that was an additional $2,000 and as well. So the total for the procedures and the professional fees that I experienced in Manila was $9,823, or over 569,000 Philippine pesos. Next, the tests and analyses. While I was there, I had to get certain tests on the eye. Of course, there was eye pressure testing and various tests of the visual fields, close looks at the optical nerve to see that everything was healing and that there wasn't any complications. And that was an additional roughly $300 as well, or 18,000 Philippine pesos. And then there were prescriptions. There were eye drops that were prescribed to prevent bacterial infection, to reduce inflammation or to slow down inflammation, and to reduce eye pressure. So there were quite a few of those. Some of them I'm still on at the moment. That was a total of $317. And then I'm going to mention a few things that you may want to budget for. Now, if your insurance is covering this, then obviously you don't have to worry about this. But some things that you may want to consider are the accommodations. So I was fortunate enough to have a friend who had a condo in Manila. So I was able to stay there while I was recuperating, during the course of the operation, while I was recuperating. However, you may want to plan for that possibility as well. If you have to stay there longer, wherever it is you're going for your operation, if you have to stay there longer, then you may want to make sure that you have the funds to cover any accommodations if that's an issue, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's motel, whether it's hotel, or whether it's staying at the hospital for an extended period of time. So keep that in mind, that you may want to budget for accommodations. One of the other things that you may want to keep in mind is to budget for transportation. In my case, I took Grab taxis. Grab is similar to Uber, and it's popular in Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Cambodia. So in my case, taking the Grab taxis every few days back and forth to the hospital for follow-ups cost me $500 US, 542. Now, something else you may want to budget for. So I'm going to list a few things that came up in my case that you may not anticipate. I mentioned accommodations and laundry, food, obviously. While you're at the hospital, of course, that'll be included in your meals. But once you are out of an outpatient and recuperating, then you should budget for meals. There's car rental. In my case, as I said, I did Grab. But you might be in a situation where you have to drive to the hospital. If that's allowed for what your condition, then car rental. Optional, of course, but entertainment, I didn't indulge in any. I stayed at home 99% of the time. Other medical and dental procedures. I took the opportunity while I was there to investigate some other options for other issues that I wanted to deal with. So I went to a naturopath in Cavite, and I also visited another one, an herbalist, also near Paranaque as well. So if you're in Thailand, for example, you may want to check out Yanhee Hospital if you're into herbal treatments, oxygen therapy or chelation therapy, or to do detoxes. So something to consider and budget for if you have the time and if you have the flexibility in your schedule and in your recuperation, is that it might be a good time to indulge in some medical tourism. Thailand is a good place for that, and the Philippines as well. While I was on Saipan, it was suggested that I get a medical clearance. Now, if you're going to do any major surgery, and the vitrectomy is major surgery, and if they're going to use anesthesia, they want to know, the doctors want to know if you're fit for the operation. So you may want to get a medical clearance, or it was suggested to me that I get a medical clearance, get a test and make sure my heart is functioning well, lungs are functioning well, don't have any pre-existing conditions that might affect the operation or the recuperation after the major surgery. In my case, I decided not to. I decided to do it in the Philippines at St. Luke's, and that seemed to make more sense at the time. Even though they could have used a medical clearance authorization from here on Saipan, it just seemed more likely that they would be more trusting of their own if done on their facility, their premises, their staff. So I waited till I was at St. Luke's Hospital before I did the medical clearance. But that's something that may or may not apply in your case. In my case, it would be cheaper to do it in the Philippines, and I thought it would be more consistent with their procedure. And then a minor point, communication. Some of you may have roaming on your smartphones. Whenever I go to a different country, I typically get a SIM card in that country and use a local number. So these are just things that came to mind that were expenses that you may want to budget for your operation, regardless of what sort of operation it is. And I guess the major one was anticipating that there may be complications. And again, I won't go into the full details, but it was because I waited so long to address the vitrectomy that the condition of the eye deteriorated such that there were complications due to high pressure primarily and inflammation. So with that said, the grand total that I spent on the vitrectomy, the hospital stay, the recuperation, the doctor's professional fees, the transportation, and the prescriptions was a grand total of $12,361.78, or the equivalent of 716,983 Philippine pesos. Well, hope that's helpful. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer it in a future video. Thanks for watching. I can see clearly.